Money. Some of you just got excited and some of you just got a little disturbed.
What is money? And why do people call it the root of all evil? Well, that is a couple questions that we are going to explore in today's episode. All right, John, this is a good one. I'm super excited. I've been wanting to talk about this for so long.
How many of you have money issues? Really? A lot of us do, don't we?
I know I did forever, and it still lingers. In fact, I'm reading a book right now. I say reading. I'm not really reading. I listen to books now.
He's being read to. I am too, actually. That's why that's why I know. But
and it just feels so good when someone reads something to you. I feel like I'm a kid again.
Totally does.
But the book's called Atomic Habits, and he talks about how like you can have a habit like this hardwired experience, and you can outgrow the habit, but you can never forget it. It's always kind of there with you. It's funny because we talk about it in our teacher trainings, and we say like you can like become the best version of yourself and dismantle these patterns that no longer serve you. And what it really, like the analogy is like when you're dismantling it, it's like someone screaming, the habit screaming at you. And over time, it's like a whisper. And what this book is actually saying is that it'll always be there. It's always going to be a whisper. It'll never be forgotten. So I say I'm over my money issues, but honestly, I still hear the whispers.
But he has a way better control, like myself, because it was the same. It was the same thing. You know, I think Chris is going to ask me some questions on this one, so I will. I was about to jump right into a story. You guys feel that? I was like, okay, I want to tell this story, but I'm going to hold and let Chris ask the question.
Yeah, John, slow your roll.
So I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
Good night. All right, so John, we had similar experiences growing up. I say that, but you're 4 years older than I am, so I'm the younger, more up-to-date version.
The runt. Fight for
oh my
food.
God. So honestly, we went through similar experiences, but the way we interpreted them are obviously different, and how it formed and shaped how we see our reality is definitely different. So let me ask you a couple questions about what did you learn growing up about money? And it's funny, I say what you learn like explicitly, like did mom and dad tell you something like this is how money works, or was it more implicit, like you just saw them behaving and that was like, oh, that's how you behave around money?
More implicit. So we grew up in. I'm telling the listeners this, Chris, because obviously you know this. We grew up in a family of 6.
I stopped listening to you after I asked the question.
And if you go to YouTube, you'll be able to see that. See him actually stop listening to me.
Start playing on my phone.
He is so not interested. We grew up family of 6. I'm sorry. 6 kids. Exactly. It was actually a family of 8, mom and dad. And we had it was a little over 1,300 square foot house. So you can imagine 8 people living in a 1,300 square foot house. Our dad is still a professional artist, and he was back then. And you know the terminology, starving artist? We knew keenly what that meant. We knew very well what a starving artist was. And our mom, obviously there were 6 of us, so she was a professional mom. And so, we always, growing up, we always had everything we needed. We didn't feel like we were wanting for stuff. Mom always kept a clean house, and always, she always made it beautiful, and dad did his best. So, but the reality was that we were living paycheck to paycheck. And when things like Christmas would come, our dad was scrambling to try to get enough money to be able to get gifts for everybody and have a Christmas. And so we didn't, when we were so young, we didn't realize this. Our parents separated when I was 6, Chris was 2, and that is when things really shifted for my understanding of what money is, and the perception of scarcity, really, of growing up in a family that were literally struggling. So very soon after that separation, we were on welfare. literally remember getting government cheese, and I just thought there were big blocks of Velveeta in the fridge, and we were like, no, we have grilled cheeses all the time. This is awesome. and just didn't, being at that age. And as I got older and started realizing, hearing mom struggling when, she was paying the bills and she was animated with it and she was just vocal with it. And so I had this perception that you need if you want to get a handle on something, you need to understand it and control it so that you don't get stuck in those same patterns. So I had a real dysfunctional relationship with money, kind of on the other side of it, where I was like, no, if I get it, I'm gonna hold on to it and make sure that I'm not struggling with my finances.
It's funny when you said when you had mom was very animated about it and didn't hide it from us. I remember right when you said that, I was like, I remember the sound of her opening up a bill and being, I just don't know where it's gonna come from. Oh my God, I was literally back there at 6 years old listening to her and being like, are we gonna die? So what's the specific, so you're the way you got wired, hearing all that was I need to control it and I'm gonna hoard it and I'm gonna when I get it, I'm never gonna let it go. Is that what was the idea behind it?
It was more of that I need to be way more. I say way more. I mean, I need to be structured around it in ways that so at 16, 17, I bought my first car, and I was able to do that because I understood that if I want to do bigger things, I can't rely on our parents to try to help us with these bigger purchases. And so when I was 16, not only did I buy my first car, 16 or 17, but I went on my first international trip when I was 16. I went to Costa Rica and surf on a surf trip, paid for it myself, paid for my first car myself. So I did these bigger purchases, these bigger things, because I understood that in order to really understand finances, even being young, so my rudimentary understanding of finances was hold on to it in a way that you're able to do bigger things with it. All right. So I held on to it and I was like, okay, I'll spend a little bit here, a little bit there, but I wasn't going off and blowing it on stuff I didn't really need. Okay,
let me stop you right there for a second, because that sounds pretty healthy. Okay, I know that I have to rely on myself. So you've learned self-reliance, and I'm gonna save, and then I'm saving. So now I have the ability to do bigger things. And then you're doing those bigger things. It doesn't sound dysfunctional to me. What's the darker side of that?
So that's the external. The internal was when I had to make a purchase. So I'm saving up for a big surf trip, or I'm saving up to buy a car. I'm saving up for some bigger thing, and I have to make a purchase. I have to make $100 purchase of something else that popped up that I did. I have to buy, I have to buy clothes because I'm school's going to start soon, right? I'm going to high school. I better buy some clothes. That internal struggle when I needed to make they're not bigger purchases like a trip or a car or something like that, but the mid purchases that were a couple $100.
Was it any purchase or
no? It was like
a pack of gum. Did that freak you out?
No, little purchases didn't freak me out. A pack of gum or go out to lunch with friends or something like that was fine, and it didn't affect me. But if I had to spend a couple $100, then I started battling inside. I was like, okay, I'm not this. Spending this couple $100 is going to now put me into a place of struggle, because now I can't get to my goal, and I'm going to end up at the same place that my parents ended up, where I'll be struggling to actually make ends meet.
So was that an actual real thing though? Was that $200 purchase actually going to potentially cause you to not be able to pay bills and your lights get shut down? Or?
No, it wasn't a reality at all. It was saying this is the dysfunction of it. This is the internal struggle, was simply an old pattern from seeing our parents struggle and seeing how they reacted to finance, and mom specifically reacted to finances, that was embedded in me. I didn't have a problem doing small purchases at all. It wasn't a big thing because I balanced that piece out. But then if all of a sudden it was like, oh, I got to spend a couple $100 because I want to get clothes, or I want to take my girlfriend out, or do something bigger, it would tweak me inside. It would twist me inside in ways. And this is the crazy thing, because it's a really great question, Chris. Is the craziest thing is that it didn't actually matter. Like, I had enough finances where whatever big purchase I was stalking was still going to happen. Maybe it pushed it out a month or so, but it didn't matter. Like, it didn't change the reality of what I felt inside based off old patterning that I saw growing up.
So how did you get over it? Like we talked about in the beginning, like in the book Atomic Habits, he talks like you're never going to forget the habits that you had, or the patterns. That is kind of the language you're using right now. So so it's not like completely wiped from your memory and like this new pattern that's been developed. So two questions. One, what did you do to overcome it? And do you still feel it?
First question, what I do to overcome it is studying finances. Like not in depth, but like I didn't take any finance courses or anything like that. But like studying ways of being better with your finances, and there's so much. There's always strategies, guys. There's thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000 strategies out there. There are ways of like, how do you organize finances? How do you simply organize your finances? Like, what do you do week to week? Like there's envelope theory or envelope strategy, where every week you have an envelope, and you put it your envelope for your groceries, your envelope for your gas, your envelope for your miscellaneous purchases, and you use that as a structure. Right. It literally at some point was like literally envelopes, but now you can do the whole same thing on like with apps and digital products, that you can just structure your money that way. So studying what other people that are successful in finances do as their regular habits, like what do they do day to day? So like if you start saving money, what do you do? What should you do when you save money? Like you and I are studying with some ninjas in this field right now, but back in the day it was like, oh, you should start an IRA, a simple IRA, or if you have more money, just start a Roth. They're like these ideas that
that we now know are tragically misguiding.
Yes, the stock market just.
It's going to be a rabbit hole. Let's not even
get. Anyway,
that's for another podcast.
But this was like a big thing for me. It was like, if people are out there doing it, and they're the biggest. So let me bring it back. So I don't want to get so detailed with it, because that's not really the question. The question is like, in order to start to break these internal habits, my go-to is to study from people that understand the thing. So if I have, and so for example, if I have issues around finances, I study finances so that I don't get caught up in the emotional response to it. That I'm doing it in a way that's strategic and that's proven out. Right? There's a framework behind it. Just like eating. Right? Eating's a great example. Like so many people are like, I need to eat better, but they're not using any proven strategy to actually eat better. And there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of strategies to eat better, right? And it all comes back down to that of like, all right, what are very effective strategies to eat better? What are very effective strategies? All of our major stuff around what are effective strategies around relationships. This is a big one for me too. I was like, okay, I want to study from people that have frameworks that lead to success in relationships, that have frameworks that lead to success in finances.
So you studied, but at some point that's still just conceptual. Like you can learn what other people did and you can study their models, but that isn't going to correct or realign you to a better way of being. And let's bring it back to like, here we are in Yoga Entrepreneur, here we are, Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. So we invested a lot of money for the first studio that we opened. We put our house on the line. That's a huge, there was, hundreds of thousands of dollars put down to be able to invest in our future. had you already at that point felt pretty comfortable with that type of like purchase, in quotes, end quotes,
quotations,
or did that like almost drive you insane?
It's funny you asked this question. I had such confidence at that. Like that decision was one of those decisions where my inner compass was like pulling. I wasn't pushing in that direction. I was being pulled in that direction. So much so that I was like, this is exactly what we have to do. It didn't come up at all for me when we did that, when we made that move. And it was like our house on the line, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. And it didn't even come up at all.
Didn't come up at all.
It was real fascinating. Right? Is that crazy? And so like probably a year and a half after, maybe 2 years after, when I first met Elizabeth, my wife, we were in the dating phase, and we went to a surf shop to buy some stuff, and she found some cool stuff for herself. I was like, no worries, get whatever you want. And she got a bunch of stuff, and it was the same thing. It was like a couple $100, $150, $200 maybe. So I can't even remember what it was, and it tweaked me. Like it came up so loud, just screaming, and my whole demeanor shifted. She got back in the truck because I was in the truck, just like hanging out, doing something. She got back in the truck. I got a bunch of cool stuff and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I was like in a bad mood. And she was like, WTF? Like what? Like that means what the fuck, by the way. We don't cuss, but I just want to throw it out there. If you have any little ones listening, turn it, you can keep it up now because I already said it. Sorry about that. But she was like, what's going on with you? And I had like nothing. And like for an hour, I was trying to play this like, no, nothing's wrong. And then she was like, we got to talk. Like what happened? And that was the turnkey experience for me. That was the shift. I was like, I literally like, I'm in love with this woman. My finances are fine. At that point, I hadn't studied as much as I had now, but I was still like I was not in a place of struggle at all. I was doing the things, and we had the studio rock and roll, and we did all these things in life that were like great, and we were already successful at that point, and it came up, and it's the craziest thing. It was just literally just a pattern that shifted me, that I accepted because I wasn't conscious of it. I accepted, right, and I moved into this like, I say depressed, but this like down state all of a sudden for hours. And at the end of that night, I had a heart to heart with her. Like this comes from growing up with nothing, from seeing my mom struggle, from not getting any information about how to work with finances from my dad, except for the fact that the
universe will take care of you
the universe,
at the 11th hour of every single month.
The law of attraction will step in. You just got to ask. And at that moment I was like, this is not how I want to live. I am not going to deal with this anymore. I don't have to. The reality, the facts are here, and the feelings do not match the facts. And so when that feeling comes up, I'm going to face it dead on and decide at that moment whether I'm going to accept it or not. And so that was the big turnkey for me.
Yeah, that's gold. The facts and the feelings, right? The facts of my life are not aligning with the feeling. If I look at the facts, the feeling I have doesn't make sense because the factual information shows me that the feeling I have is actually not relevant or appropriate to this situation at all. Yeah. So let's bring this home. What would you say for people that have similar issues like you, that are as dysfunctional around money as you are?
Oh my God.
No offense to any of you, utter and complete offense to John.
I accept that 100%. You won't be able to see this, but I just punched Chris in the face.
You may hear it.
Just kidding. We have to see it in order to do something about it. And most of what's driving us is unconscious. The patterns that drive us are unconscious. They're working in our subconscious. And so we just get these urges to do something, right? We get these urges to react a certain way based off a circumstance. So the very first thing we have to do is be able to see it. We have to get real with ourselves. And when an emotion happens, we have to look at that emotion and say, okay, what's going on here? This doesn't match the facts. My feeling doesn't match the facts. I need to look at what's happening because there's a pattern that just took me over. That is we're living in unconscious unskillfulness, and we need to get into conscious unskillfulness, right?
To be aware of what you weren't prior aware of.
We got to be aware of it first. The best tool for this, Chris, is meditation. Even if it's small amounts of it, every morning, sit for 2 or 3 minutes, because when we practice paying attention, then we can catch ourselves when those feelings come up. We can pay attention to what's actually happening, how we're feeling. At that point, the next step is to have conscious skillfulness. It's literally deciding in the moment, do I want to feel this way? Do I want to feel this way? Because we get to choose. If I could have a choice right now, and if I'm able to identify it, then I actually do have a choice. But if I have a choice right now, would I choose to feel this way? And if not, then we need to change it. And the 3 best ways of changing it are to change your state, change your story, or change your or have a strategy with it, right? This is Tony Robbins 101.
State,
right?
Story, strategy. That's awesome. I think the next episode should be you interviewing me about it, because I have like almost the exact opposite experience of how this is so fascinating, the very same situation, like we were literally living the same circumstance, and how I interpreted those events that John just talked about, it came about in literally the 180 degree opposite way. So maybe that'll be our next episode.
Yeah, that might be a good one.
We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening and taking part in this conversation. And as always, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, subscribe to it. It means a lot to us.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Peace. Yes. Thanks so much for listening to Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets. Do you have a question that you'd like us to answer raw and uncut on the podcast?
If you want your questions answered, all you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do 3 simple things.
1, rate and review, telling us what you think of the podcast. 2, in that review, ask anything you want related to yoga. And 3, if you want a shout out, leave your Instagram handle or name. And that's it.
Then listen in to hear your question answered live, raw, and uncut.
Join us next time on Yoga Entrepreneur Secrets Podcast.
Thanks.